A fleet of spaceships appears around Earth. Aboard one of them, a man briefs the crew, warning that time travel can scramble the brain like spaghetti, so it's best not to overthink it. Instead, they should focus on their mission, eliminating the enemy before they're even born. At this point in history, their enemy's ancestors haven't yet evolved thumbs or spines. The fleet belongs to the Planetary Peace Corps, and their mission is to turn Earth into a radioactive wasteland. However, it's soon revealed that the man was delivering this grim speech to a group of children at a theme park. The kids burst into tears, prompting his boss to summon him to the office. The man, Ray Smith, is promptly fired. He gathers his belongings and walks out. Ray meets up with his friends Pete and Toby, who also work at the same theme park. Still reeling from being fired, he mentions he's considering moving back home and taking a job at his uncle's place. Pete asks what he'd do if there were no limits, no rules, no restrictions. Without missing a beat, Ray says he'd be a Time Lord. Later, the trio heads to the movies, then walks to the pub, grumbling about the film the whole way there. Toby is jotting down ideas for a movie script, while Pete and Ray tease him about his plot lines. At the pub, they all start composing a letter to Hollywood, filled with tips on how to stop making terrible films. Toby writes it on a sheet torn from his notebook, which is already filled with his script scribbles. Eventually, Ray gets up to fetch another round of drinks, and the other two shout after him to grab some chips as well. Ray returns with the drinks and chips and starts telling Pete and Toby about a woman named Cassie, whom he believes was a prank set up by them. They look genuinely confused and deny any involvement. Ray then recounts his strange encounter with Cassie, how she claimed to have read all about him in books that, from his point of view, haven't been written yet. Pete and Toby burst out laughing, accusing him of making up an imaginary girlfriend. Ray explains that Cassie is from 150 years in the future. Her time machine is hardwired into her body, with her bones replaced by a polymer composite. She's a time leak repair agent, and she knew he'd be at the pub today. She didn't want to miss the chance to meet Ray the Great. She also warned him about people known as editors, who've been trying to erase individuals from history, a process called time editing, which is considered a serious time crime. Cassie explains that editors have attempted to erase famous artists right after their greatest works, hoping to preserve their legacy by avoiding any decline in quality. She's comfortable sharing all this with Ray because of his obsession with time travel. If he ever tells anyone, no one will take him seriously. Ray brings up chaos theory, pointing out that even the smallest changes can ripple out into massive consequences, meaning that even something as simple as him being late to return to the table could potentially alter the course of the future. Mesmerized by Cassie, Ray invites her to come meet his friends, but she politely declines, explaining that she needs to track down a time leak. Before leaving, she kisses him on the cheek and disappears into the night. Pete is convinced someone paid her to put on the act. He excuses himself to use the bathroom, but when he returns, he finds the pub in chaos. Everyone is dead, the place is trashed, and it looks like something catastrophic just happened. Panicked, he immediately bolts back into the bathroom. Pete returns to find everything exactly as it was, calm, normal, and untouched. Shaken, he tells Ray and Toby about the destruction he just witnessed, and insists that something terrible is about to happen. He adds that he even saw his own dead body, but with a beard. Intrigued and slightly concerned, Ray and Toby decide to investigate for themselves. They head to the bathroom, with Pete nervously following close behind. Ray checks each bathroom stall, but they're all empty. Pete insists they need to retrace his exact steps to understand what's going on. The three head back into the pub, only to find it completely normal again. No bodies, no mess, just as if nothing had ever happened. Ray casually heads over to grab some peanuts, while Pete and Toby return to their seats. But just as they settle in, they suddenly recoil in horror at something unseen. Ray rushes over to the table and is stunned to see all three of them, himself included, already sitting there. The trio immediately bolts out of the pub in a panic. Outside, Ray warns them that they must avoid any contact with their other selves to prevent a paradox. Toby suggests heading back into the bathroom, but Ray and Pete quickly shoot the idea down. Then Ray comes up with a plan. They'll hide in a cupboard and wait until their past selves go into the bathroom, giving them a chance to slip back in without being seen. Once their past selves disappear into the bathroom, effectively vanishing into the past, Ray, Pete, and Toby quietly emerge from their hiding spot. Ray suddenly remembers that Cassie must still be around. He steps outside and spots his earlier self in conversation with her. After watching the moment play out, and once his past self walks away, Ray approaches Cassie and tells her he's found her time leak, hidden in the gents' bathroom. Cassie doesn't believe Ray and walks away. Moments later, another version of Cassie, this one from further in the future, appears and pulls him aside to the garden, a spot where she says no one will arrive for the next 23 minutes. She explains that, from her perspective, 6 months have passed since they last met. Calmly, she reassures him that she's already taken care of the time leak and cleaned up the situation with the dead bodies. Ray asks her why she's still here, if everything is already fixed, but she refuses to answer, saying that the information doesn't belong in this time period. Instead, she urges him to simply wait until their past selves enter the bathroom, then everything will fall into place. Just as she finishes, a couple unexpectedly arrives in the garden, catching her off guard. She quickly tells Ray to get back into the cupboard while she investigates. Once their past selves enter the bathroom, the trio quietly emerges from the cupboard. Pete heads toward the gents' bathroom, but Ray stops him, suggesting they avoid taking unnecessary risks. Instead, they decide to use the ladies' bathroom. However, when they step back out, they're stunned to find the pub transformed into a bleak, post-apocalyptic version of itself, desolate, damaged, and eerily silent. Pete rushes back into the bathroom and returns moments later, bearded, filthy, and visibly shaken. He's covered in grime and tells Ray and Toby that they won't attack if you carry their scent. Clearly traumatized, he refuses to talk about what he experienced. Instead, he urges them to focus on gathering weapons and food. With no better plan, the trio begins scavenging the ruined pub for anything that might help them survive. Supplies, tools, whatever they can find. Pete tells them he's starting to think he's seen them before. 3 guys dressed exactly like they are now. The thought unsettles everyone. Pete wants to head back to the bathroom to try escaping again, but Ray suggests staying in the future a bit longer, curious about what might happen. Toby proposes they wait by the fire and hope for a rescue. Pete, still in survival mode, heads off to find some wood so he can turn his knife into a makeshift spear. Toby stays by the fire, keeping watch, while Ray ventures outside to explore what's left of the future world. Meanwhile, Pete stumbles upon something and urgently calls out to the others. When they join him, they find a painting on the wall, an eerie image of the 3 of them sitting in the pub, wearing the exact same clothes they have on now. A strange squeaking sound suddenly breaks the silence. Panic sets in, and without waiting to find out more, they all bolt back to the bathroom. Outside, a man pushing a shopping trolley with a loud squeaky wheel is suddenly devoured by a massive ant. Back in the bathroom, Pete recalls a previous incident, how when he stepped outside once, the ground gave way beneath him and he fell into a forest. He couldn't pinpoint where or when he was, but suspects it might have been the distant past. A time, if ancient, their fossils wouldn't yet be complete. While there, he saw bodies, lifeless, scattered, a haunting memory he still can't shake. Pete says creatures in the woods only come out at night. A scream echoes, and they hide in a stall. Their past selves enter. Pete wants to warn them, but the others stop him. Past Ray checks stalls, nearly opening theirs, until past Pete calls him away just in time. The 3 exit the stall once their past selves leave. Suddenly, past Pete walks in, spots them, and quickly leaves. Filthy Pete chases after him, with Ray and Toby following. Inside the pub, they find a themed night party underway. Everyone dressed exactly like them. They search the party for Pete and eventually find him. Noticing the same painting on the wall, they see Toby in it, writing something on a piece of paper. Toby realizes it's the letter to Hollywood. They speculate that whatever is written on the back of that letter must be what made them famous, since it surely wasn't the letter to Hollywood itself. Suddenly, a woman named Millie appears, claiming she trained Cassie and has come to take them back home. Believing they've returned to their original timeline, the 3 exit the men's bathroom. In the pub, they wait for their past selves to head to the bathroom. Once they do, the trio quietly returns to their seats and reads the back of the letter. They begin arguing over whose idea it was. Ray, needing to pee, tells them he's heading outside. In the garden, while relieving himself, Cassie appears again and tells him that another 6 months have passed for her, and she's been promoted for resolving the timeline chaos. Ray tells her he's just happy to be back in the present. She tells him not to worry about just half an hour, but Ray insists they went decades into the future. Cassie doesn't believe him at first, until he mentions the time leak in the ladies' bathroom and meeting Millie. Cassie's expression shifts. She reveals that Millie is actually an editor, and she must have brought them back not to help, but to kill them. Cassie tells Ray to stay put while she goes to get help, but when she tries to leave, her time machine fails to activate. Realizing the urgency, Ray rushes back and tells his friends about Millie's true intentions. He suggests burning the letter, since it's the key to their future fame. It's also how Millie can track them across time. Without it, she'll have no reason to come after them. Toby hesitates, torn between safety and success. He admits that most of his ideas have been terrible, but he always believed that persistence would pay off. Now that he's finally created something that leads to fame, he pleads with Ray not to burn the letter, desperate to hold on to the one thing that proves he was right to keep trying. Ray grabs the lighter from Pete, but it won't spark. Frustrated, he tells Pete to keep trying while he heads off to find matches. Meanwhile, Cassie finds Ray and says she's unable to get a signal to time travel. Back inside, tension boils over as Pete and Toby fight, Toby trying to wrestle the letter from Pete's hands. In the scuffle, the letter slips and falls to the floor. Toby reaches for the letter, but Millie suddenly appears. She tells him that this letter is the only thing the three of them will ever create, and the only thing they'll be remembered for. Just then, Ray arrives and points a gun at her. Cassie steps in, trying to reason with Millie, but Millie uses telepathy to knock Cassie unconscious. Millie tells Ray that her time machine is armed and easily calls his bluff, mocking his toy gun. She turns to Toby and makes him an offer. Give her the letter, and she'll turn all three of them into legends. As Toby hesitates, Pete tries to grab the letter from him, but Millie blasts Pete with her built-in weapon. Dazed on the floor, Pete notices a song starting to play on the karaoke machine. Toby, having made up his mind to destroy the letter, yells for Ray to throw him the matches. As Ray does, Millie fires at Toby, but Ray leaps in front of him, taking the hit. A massive blast rips through the bar, killing everyone, just like Pete had seen before. Ray, barely alive, crawls toward the table, trying to reach the letter. At that moment, a past version of Pete enters, sees the carnage, and flees in terror. Just then, Ray knocks a glass of beer and destroys the letter. Times start reversing back with the three of them sitting at the table. They notice that the letter has been completely destroyed. They decide to go to a different pub. As they are walking down the road, Cassie appears through a portal. Ray and Cassie kiss, and Cassie reveals that they have been seeing each other for 2 years. Cassie tells Ray that when he knocked over the pint, he unintentionally created a paradox, causing time leaks to spread everywhere. They now have just 14 hours to save Earth, urging them to act fast. She asks the trio to follow her into a parallel universe. All three enter the portal after her. Moments later, Ray and Pete emerge from behind a wall, confirming the others are gone, only for a second Pete to appear. Suddenly, Toby runs by, being chased by another Toby. The movie ends with one of the Petes sighing, "This is getting too complicated." Please like and subscribe the channel for more videos like these.